Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and today we're going to be talking about some things that we need to face the music on and you need to be farming. We're going to be covering a couple different things here in the game that, if I'm being honest, whether you're, we'll talk about mid-game, early game, late game, end game, here's some things that you're going to need to focus on, the areas you're going to need to expand your roster into, because as this game changes and evolves and continues into 2025, you are going to need some of these things to continue to maintain the level that you're at now. So we're going to kind of talk through this. What are, the things to farm? And, again, this is kind of inspired, if you will, from this Naboo raid getting extended. And we'll kind of talk about some of the ramifications of that. Let's give a huge shout out to the channel members. If you're ever interested, y'all know where that link is. It's down below, along with a link to Discord. Go check it out. Thank you guys again for keeping the faith, believing. Y'all know the drill by now. I couldn't do this without you, and your support means everything to me. So thank you all again. Let's talk about what to be farming now. Alright, so listen. I'm going to get real with you all here. You are not going to like me, but it's time to face some hard truth. There's two parts to this Bad Batch. If you are a mid-game player, you're facing a lot of Executors, you're starting to see a Leviathan or, some profundities in your Grand Arenas, I will no longer be accepting the excuse I'm waiting for a Bad Batch Lightspeed bundle after May the 4th. I think May the 4th is the next most likely time that we could get this. If it doesn't happen then, I'm going to start yelling. Because most of you have been holding on to that since November of 2024 now. So it's, 3.5 months that you've been kind of waiting around for this. 4 months, 4.5 months. We've been waiting around for this Bad Batch bundle to drop. It hasn't yet. And for a lot of you, that means that your fleets for the Galactic Republic are not good enough to beat an Executor, not good enough to beat a, damn it, can't talk, the Leviathan. We're going to be honest. Time to face music. It's not, by May the 4th, if there's no Bad Batch Lightspeed bundle, hammer them. Most of you have done farms that take far more Kyrotech and resources than this team. Now, I'm not saying that, this was not building them was necessarily wrong, but I cannot condone continuing to delay building this team beyond May the 4th. You're not only just like, it's a good team and a good ship, you're shorting yourself on Lord Vader, and that's a galactic legend. He's a good galactic legend. I don't care what you think. So, yeah, the old Bad Batch, if it's May the 4th, we haven't got a bundle, it's time to start building them. I'm not going to be taking the excuse of waiting around anymore, because at that point, you could have built them already, been done with it, had your Lord Vader, had your Marauder, and you would be having success in the game with them. The next group of characters here is the new Bad Batch. I think for a while, a lot of us were thinking that this was a team that, hey, it's coming into the game, probably not going to be needing much of it. I'm beginning to think that that is less and less likely because of how much some of their shards are getting pushed. That the Ascension bundle here, right? Where's that at? There's that. I guess that must have expired on me. There is that Ascension bundle for the Bad Batch. There's a lot of their packs, right, that are still available where there was some shards and other things. I'm going to tell you that I think this is a faction that we're going to need to keep our eye on, right? I 1000% believe this is a faction that we're going to be need to keep we need to keep our eye on this faction because we are going to need them. And I'm not sure what for yet, but I would not be shocked if they're either part of a raid or something else. I do not believe that CG is just going to release them into the game and let them go. There's going to be something they're needed for because there's no journey guide attached to them. Again, just one man's very humble opinion, putting my think like CG cap on, conspiracy theorist 101 here. There's a purpose. And so if you're in that later end part of the game, I'd start shard farming as many of these characters as you can when they show up, because you are not going to want to be left waiting around on that. If all of a sudden they're needed for something and you're like, I don't have any shards of them, you're going to want them. So, the Bad Batch in and of itself, I think there's kind of like two sides to that coin. You got to get the old ones if you're earlier in the game, and if you're later in the game, you got to get the new ones. It's something I really believe deep down. The next thing I'm going to say is Mandalorians, and particularly looking at Bo-Katan Mandalore. I think this is she's arguably more important than Inquisitors, definitely more important than Jedi Knight Cal Kestis. And there's two major reasons for this. One is obviously the resources, what she can beat on offense in both Territory Wars and Grand Arena. But it's also because her requirements are Beskar Mermando, who's a pilot for your Executor, Paz Vizsla, IG-12, and Grogu, who go into her team. So there's 3 characters for her team. And her 4th character is a Jedi Vanguard in Kelleran Beck. This Jedi Vanguard faction is something that I think you are going to want to pay attention to. They've already told us that Jocasta's full team is not in the game yet, that they're going to be releasing a team to go with her. So she's going to be, more than likely, she's going to be a good unit. We are going to see some good things from this team. They've been pretty, even this new Bad Batch team, they're beating some good stuff. I'm going to feel the same way about this team. Having some of the Vanguards already built up for various reasons, whether it was the raid, Jedi Master Kenobi, or, Bo-Katan with Kelleran Beck, I think this kind of ties in nicely that getting your Kelleran Beck, Bo-Katan Mandalore, getting into your Jedi Vanguards is going to be a big boost for a lot of accounts. Again, I think this is something, if you are in that middle part of the game, you're, doing well enough in Conquest that you're kind of, maybe later part of the game, I'm looking here. If you're in that middle part of the game, this is still a very good faction to have the pieces for when you unlock Jocasta, right? Understand that kind of difference is, I have a feeling this is going to be one of those characters that these, you think like Plo Koon is a GL rec, Qui-Gon's a GL rec, Shaak Ti's a GL rec, Barisofi's a GL rec, Ayla Secura's a GL rec. I mean, you're going to have the pieces to create a team for Jocasta Nu, even if you don't build the new ones. And again, a lot of us thinking with the 25th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith that there's somehow going to be Jedi Vanguard in another raid or something. Here you go, right? Just a lot of speculation, but I think that is something that I would be looking at, potentially getting ready to build. Now, the other thing that I would be farming when we talk about ships, I already mentioned the Galactic Republic. I really hope I got that muted so you guys didn't hear that ridiculous sneeze. But I already talked about this Galactic Republic fleet. This is beating the triple attacker variant of the punishing one. This is beating when Houndstooth is starting. Like, this fleet is really important. So having these pieces, obviously a great thing, right? But there's other ships that I would say I would be ensuring that you are still building up, even if they're not quite as important. And one of them is the Empire fleets, particularly looking at TIE Defender. This is a ship, the TIE Defender, the Emperor's Shuttle. I cannot stress enough how important those two ships are. I feel a lot of you have Vader's ship, the Scythe, the Interceptor. Those aren't hard. Making sure TIE Defender and the Emperor's Shuttle are still priorities for you will be really important. And that kind of goes for a couple of different reasons. This goes beyond just, it's, there's good characters in there or something. The importance of being able to use this fleet, because this is a very good offensive fleet. This will beat Negotiators. This can beat the Resistance. I've seen this beat, Profundities. Hell, there's even variants that are still beating an Executor lineup. You can't ignore this anymore. Ships, fleets cannot afford to be ignored. I think pre-punishing one, it was a little bit easier to kind of, shove things off to the side because there was a few more counters available. Now that those counters aren't there, I think this fleet just gained an infinite amount of traction and is very, very important. So and I wanted to really hone in on this fleet because I think it still is, it kind of exists in that space, kind of in a realm of its own of, hey, I'm pretty consistent against some very good teams or some very good fleets, and without me, you're going to struggle. So I think this is one that I would really be looking at, making sure you've got the pieces to make it work. Now, a lot about fleets, new Bad Batch, Jedi Vanguard. Okay, Phil, tell me something that isn't ridiculous that I should be considering building. If I had to be honest with a lot of you, I would be looking at some characters like Luthen, where you've got a Mon Mothma, most of you have a Mon Mothma team. Maybe some of you have Saw Gerrera already. This is the kind of character that can make a big difference. He's extremely good, low investment in terms of Zetas and Omicrons, and makes the team fantastic. I would say that a character like Luthen can elevate your roster without a lot of extra investment, comparative to the likes of, say, a Malicos, where there's Seer and Cal and Fulcrum and a tank or somebody else that you've got to make sure that we've got the Zetas, we've got the builds, where a lot of you with that Mon Mothma team, boom, there goes Luthen, or you've got the Saw Gerrera team. But another kind of thought that I have for a lot of you, right, is this Zaalbar Omicron. Now, the Zaalbar Omicron is pretty solid, right? And there's two purposes. There's the 5v5 and the 3v3. I think if you are a mid-game player, and I'll talk about this in a whole other video, but I think if you're a mid-game player, I'm looking at potentially thinking about getting this Old Republic team. Many of you probably bought the Lightspeed bundle. If you bought it, I would try to make this team happen, because the mission Zaalbar underneath the Darth Revan team. In Kyber 1, I'm going to sit there, I used my Gungans against it, or I just used a GL and it was easy. Okay. Now I'm going to go up against somebody who's, 4 million galactic power, doesn't have Gungans, can't afford to use a GL against this, probably drop a team against it, right? The value of an Omicron like this definitely sits within the middle part of the game. That this is one of those Omicrons, very similar to even what I would argue the Wampa Omicron is. Wampa in late Kyber 2, getting into Kyber 1, I don't really get to use it that much. And I'd say that with this Zaalbar Omicron, it's pretty similar, where you're going to get into the upper echelons and people are going to have the teams and have the tools to counter this. But early on, it's going to pose so much of a threat, and it will allow you to play your GACs very differently, whether in 3v3 or 5v5. So I did want to tease this Omicron a little bit. I think that is really, really good. The last aspect that I want to make sure that we're paying attention to and getting ready to start farming, regardless of where you are in the game, what I am going to tell you now that is very different than a lot of advice I've given in the past. I would be prepared that some teams are going to need extra relic levels before you would normally be ready for them. And I think that kind of encompasses two aspects. Number one, trying to catch up on the Zetas. But number two, think about the impact of some of these assault battles, the raid teams. They want some extra relic levels that you might not have equipped if you were, if I was 6 million GP, okay, I got my Gungans Relic 5, I'm good to go. But they were in the raid, so, you bump them up. I think with the next raid as it comes in, if you're in that mid-game, I would potentially look at one of those teams that has a lot of value and invest a little bit more heavily. What that will do, obviously, it's better for your guild, but it can carry you in other game modes. Now, I'm not saying to go and take your, Darth Maul, Darth Sidious, and Newt Gunray to Relic 9. But think about what the Queen Amidala team, at Relic 9 does. Think about if you go back to, the speeder bike raid. Having a Drogon and Scout Trooper at, Relic 8, what that did for people. Or being able to, go all the way back to the Hutt Cartel raid and having the Jabba team at Relic 8, what that was able to do. I think with this next one, looking at that really A-tier team and saying, hey, if I can make some investment here, I'm going to be able to score more points, and my roster is going to be that much better. I think for many of you in that middle part of the game, that could make a big difference in your Grand Arenas and your Territory Wars, along with territory battles as well, getting you additional waves. So I did want to kind of mention that because, again, as you know, if you've watched the channel, I don't like to increase relic levels unless I absolutely have to, right? I've gotten where I got to because I did the bare minimum. But the game is not what it was when I was able to get away with that. Things have changed. There's a lot more relic gates. There's a lot more power gates, and you are going to need to start investing in some of those top end things to higher places than I was able to get away with because of how those requirements and things have changed. So I did want to at least tease that. I know it's not like a team, but it's conceptually, if you guys can visualize that, once those new things start coming in, you might want to increase their relics a bit beyond where you would normally put them at, because the game has changed, right? So I did want to tease that. Gonna leave it there for you guys. I want to know what you think. Was this helpful? I'm going to continue our series on modding. I'm going to tease that we are going to talk about everybody's favorite unaligned Force user, and I will leave it at that. Like, subscribe, comment. I love you all. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.